Are your existing solutions able to take advantage of real threat intelligence? Common solutions like firewalls weren't designed to handle the massive and growing volume of threat indicators. This challenge often results in significant gaps in your protections, even when you think you have it covered. You need to protect yourself by filtering network traffic against unique threat indicators in a way that allows you to act. Polywall by Bandora Systems is the solution that filters over 10 million indicators right out of the box. Developed in partnership with the Department of Defense, Polywall is affordable for companies of all sizes. Get your free trial today at bandorasystems.com. Rapid7 powers the practice of SecOps. Using shared data, analytics, and automated workflows, SecOps unites IT, DevOps, and security teams to make security an outcome of innovation. Rapid7 combines technology, expertise, and advocacy to drive vulnerability management, application security, incident detection, and log management for more than 7,000 organizations worldwide. Power up your SecOps practice with a free trial at rapid7.com/securityweekly. Skeleton keys, golden tickets, forged packs, DC Sync, DC Shadow. The Active Directory attack surface is expanding faster than admins can keep up with. Securing your environment begins with implementing least privilege administrative models, but does not end there. Many organizations send Active Directory syslog events to a SIM platform. However, logs are noisy, of limited scope, and are time-consuming to review and act upon. Active Directory is secure when it's clean, understood, configured properly, monitored closely, and controlled tightly. StealthBits technologies provide solutions that monitor, secure, and detect the latest threats against Active Directory. Visit them today at stealthbits.com to learn more.
And we're back. Jason stayed over with us, and we're going to get into talking about some of the articles. So I just want to remind everybody the purpose of doing this. What happens is, whether it comes out in a newsletter, it's a site I follow, it's something that you send to me, and I'm always happy to get those things where somebody says, hey, what do you think of this? This is a chance where we get a chance to, as a team, break it down and take a look at it. So today it's going to be great. We're going to get Jason's perspective, Paul's perspective, and my perspective. And we try to pick things that are relevant to leadership, communication, and innovation. These are things that whether you're a vendor paying attention to this, you're an investor, or you're in the trenches, you're a security leader today trying to figure this out. These are the things, and what I hope you get out of this is not just, oh, I should go read that, but what are you looking for when you read it? How can you apply this? My hope is that there's just one idea in this next segment that you can try when you're listening to this and see a little bit of a boost from it. That's why we're taking the time to break these types of things down. So I'm excited about that. Paul, where do you want to start?
Just with a quick announcement, if you go to securityweekly.com/domain tools, the next webcast is not there at this very moment. By the time you hear it, it will be updated. We're going to be talking about JavaScript in relation to some of the attacks against British Airways and Newegg that were JavaScript based. Our experts from Domain Tools and our own expert, Keith Hoodlet, will be talking about how to dig into JavaScript, how to deobfuscate it, and how to use some of that data to trace back attacks against your environment. So make sure you check that out, securityweekly.com/domain tools. We can start with wherever you like. Empathy for someone that...
Let's talk about tactical empathy. So this is a Harvard Business Review article, How to Develop Empathy for Someone Who Annoys You. And I didn't want to suggest that a lot of us find ourselves annoyed with a lot of people, but I think security right now has a lot of frustration, and I think it works in a variety of directions and situations. And so I looked at this. It just so everybody knows, when I read these articles, before I put them in, some of them start with an eye roll, like, let me see what this is going to lay out. I liked this one a lot, and I'm gonna open up with the part that I liked, but we can give people some of the high notes. It talks about following your curiosity, and this is why I think it's so important. If people ask me one of the important traits of a security professional today, if number one is not tenacity, it's curiosity. And I think those two tend to work together. If you show me someone who's tenacious at solving a problem and curious about the way everything works, I think it's great. When it comes to empathy, we don't always understand it. April Wright, when she filled in last week, talked about authentic empathy. I like that a lot, as opposed to fake or just trying to do something and get by. But there's two other types, or the two basic types. There's usually cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. Cognitive empathy is about understanding the other person's position, and an emotional empathy is feeling what they feel, which is not sympathy, right, which is feeling bad on their behalf or feeling something on their behalf. So what's interesting about this curiosity is when you're in one of these situations, try to understand it from their perspective and then try to feel it from their perspective as well. And it's called perspective taking or perspective switching, if you can get it right. oh wow, once you start practicing this, you're going to be amazed at the doors that get opened on this. So I think just for that alone, it's completely worth this read. It brings a lot of other stuff into it. It's got some other questions on it. The other thing I like about this is focus on your similarities. It's so easy to focus on what tears us apart. Politics is built on that. A lot of stuff is built on that. But I found if you find what makes us the same, you get a lot further. Yep. So Jason, Paul, as you guys skim through this, what are the things that kind of pop up to you where you go, yep, well, that's good advice right there?
As you were talking, Michael, I think an important point is to understand why someone annoys you or why they have a particular perspective on something. And that could be something directly related to their job.
Is it my fault?
Right.
Do they annoy me because of one of my own nuances, right? It could possibly be one of my pet peeves, right? So introspection is huge.
And never split the difference. We talk about black swans. And so there just may be something that like I said, that could be something in the business. Right. It could be something in their personal lives. Yep. And once you understand or even consider that maybe it's something in their personal life, as an example, that you're more willing to work with that person and let some things slide. Absolutely. Because Michael said, you understand where they're coming from, and you're feeling what they're feeling. Now, it's hard to do if you don't know exactly what's going on. But I think I like to play those scenarios out in my head and not believe that, well, everyone's out to get me and annoy me and evil and we're looking to be a roadblock in what I'm trying to do, that there's other factors that you have to consider. Yeah.
I think you always have to take it from the most positive angle, because you never know what's going on in a person's business career, personal, situation. You have no idea what's actually happening. So there may be outside influences going on, right?
I've caught myself so many times in the sales process too that we're doing here at Security Weekly, and it's easy to fall into the emotional aspect of it and go,
absolutely.
Well,
in the day and age we live in,
that person doesn't like me, like they're ignoring me. But when you uncover it, I think it's experience that leads to maturity in this, and you understand that they're not getting back to me because they just had some layoffs at that company, and that I mean, I won't say obviously who the vendor is, but that that happened, and it makes me realize that you really have to be emotionally attached as you make decisions, because put yourself in that person's shoes. Like, if other people around you, or you're the person that just got laid off, like that sucks.
And especially in this time that we're in right now, it's so easy to go down the negative rabbit hole. Yeah. It's just, you know what I mean? Everything we see on the news and everything we see on the wire, it's all this negativity and trying to get, the next news line and the next news cycle, right? So it's always combative. The political world is combative right now, right? It's not something that adds value.
And that means most of us are girded for that too.
Right.
So if you disagree with me, then you must hate me, and I've got to prepare for battle.
That's right.
I think you're right. I love that idea of start with the positive side. And as you pointed out, Paul, sometimes people have things going on in their personal lives, their professional lives, or what have you, and it's not all about you. They may not hate you. They may love you. Right. But there's a lot of other stuff going on in our lives right now, and I think all of those are really good points to think about as you're taking a look at it. Let's go to the next article. This brings back Tomas Tungus again, and I love his stuff. This one is great. This is not new. It's not a topic we haven't talked about in a while, and yet I keep seeing this happen, and so I just wanted to bring it to everybody's forefront. Quality of outcome versus quality of the decision. At its nutshell, this is what it distills down into. Do you follow a process by which you make decisions? If so, then you might have great decisions and you might have bad decisions. But if you have a process, you can analyze those. And over time, a good process followed diligently or executed faithfully, or however you want to say it, tends to consistently lead to better outcomes. What happens a lot of time is we wing it, we do it under pressure, we get a good outcome, we go, oh, I'm good at this. Yeah. And we ignore the process, whether it's decision making or anything else. And so we talk a lot about process. And in my work in the last couple of years, I've become a huge fan of work the process. The right process will always yield the right results. Absolutely. It just takes time. Yeah. And I just wanted to bring this back because of how important it is. What do you guys think? Like, when you look at this, it's a really easy read. It quotes some stuff from Annie Duke, who is exceptionally brilliant, and she's been making the rounds. She got a new book out. It's on my list of things to read. I don't know if I can recommend it yet, but we'll go through it because I've been really starting to study how people make decisions. Yeah. When you guys look at this, what kind of insights do you have based on your background?
I absolutely love it personally. I mean, you're shined on a little bit of a sidetrack that I have going on as a leader, right? I'm big into lean process improvement, right? So when Lean IT came out way back in the day, I started focusing on it, and then back at the Atreon days, we had a whole lean process improvement initiative, and I went through all the courses to be a trainer for business process mapping. And
it's awesome.
And,
that was
and
before
really,
Gene Kim brought that concept into IT and development.
So process mapping was something that I was very, very heavy into. And what I always used to say to people is, we can go buy this great shiny tool, but if your process is shit, the tool's going to be shit in the end, right? At the end of the day, if your process sucks, all you have is a shiny tool, right? You're not going to get the value that you should be getting out of it. So dead on, and one of the things I do is I try to start with the outcome in mind. So know what the outcome is and build the process to get that outcome. It could change over time.
Kobe loves you. Look at you. Begin with the end in mind.
Begin with the end. That's right. All right.
Well, I think also, in extreme ownership, right, they talk about the least bad decision. I think in a lot of decisions we make, Michael and Jason, it's really, almost all of them, right, are the least bad. Because there's risk in any decision. Absolutely. And I like the article. It says, you may draw a king high straight flush. The odds are 1.5 in a million that you might lose, but you can still bust, right? And that's right. I thought that was pretty telling. I also don't be so hard on yourself when things go badly, and don't be so proud of yourself when they don't go well.
Agreed, 100%.
You know what? I think that's a great point, and that's where I come back to it too. I now review the decisions I make, and I made a decision recently where I wasn't completely thrilled with the outcome, and as I started to beat myself up, I went back over and I said, well, hold on though, I actually. Right, it was not emotional. So when we talk about emotion, there's a time when you need to be emotional. There's a time to check the emotion, and there's a time to bring the emotion back in. Yep, did all that.
Right.
But I skipped a couple steps that I normally would have followed, and I was like, see, if I had been more faithful to the process, I would have gotten a better outcome. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So to be fair, I beat myself up over it for about 2 or 3 days, and then got to the end and went, wait, stop. What can I learn from this? How? All right. What on the process could I have done better? How could I have conditioned myself for it? And the reason was because some of it went faster than I expected. And so I thought I had a natural break built in. Yep, totally didn't. When I flew past it, I skipped steps. And so this hit home. And it's funny, I picked this out before I learned from my own decisions. But let's talk about Occam's razor. Occam's razor is one of those things where people will always say, oh, well, that just means the simple, in most cases, the simplest solution is the best. Sometimes, but that's an oversimplification of it. And so what happens is this is a problem-solving principle. And the best way to summarize it, and I love the way that Shane Paris did this in Farnham Street, among competing hypotheses, the one with the fewest assumptions should be selected. So it's where people say the simplest solution is correct. It's not always the simplest explanation is correct, but it's all about simplicity. And it's because so much of our world is complex that if we stop long enough to simplify it, we have this tendency to do better. So first of all, just reading this article means that you're more likely to be knowledgeable about this concept and use it in a proper way. But more importantly then, when you start taking a look at this, you're just talking about least bad decision. Well, this gives you that ability to say, well, hold on, how much do I know right now? Oh, well, I've got to do something, right? I've got to prioritize, I've got to execute, I've got to do something, and I've got to do it now. Great, do it. And know this is your first step. This is what I like to call your best next step. Yep. And you might need more evidence. You might need more insights. That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, I think, this article and other works has really got me thinking about how you simplify the message and simplify the mission.
Sure.
But I think a critical component to that is what you were talking about earlier, Jason, is when you do that, make sure that your team understands the context.
Yeah,
and make sure your clients understand the context and the why.
Right. And I didn't read this article. That's just, I'm putting it out there for everybody to understand that. But when I heard Michael actually talk through the concept of the article, when you're picking the choice that has the least assumptions, right away in my head says, all right, the least assumptions means least amount of risks, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're assuming things, you don't know the risk behind it, so there's potential risk there. So you're minimizing the risk at the same time, at least from the way I'm understanding it, right? So when you're looking down the barrel and you want to make a decision, you're going to say, all right, this one has X amount of risk, this one has this, a little bit less risk. Let me try to attack that one and see if that's
you're dead on. So let me give you the secondary challenge, and I see this a lot when I work with people. The question, what problem are you trying to solve? Deceptively simple. And so therefore people say, oh, it's this. And I usually will have to say, no, that's a compound problem. In fact, you just gave me 5 problems in one. Yeah. And it takes us some time to unpack that. That's the same risk, because although what we've agreed to is that nature favors simplicity over complexity, it doesn't mean that simplicity is the same thing to everybody. It's entirely subjective. Right. And so a lot of times you'll have something that sounds simple. but each of those words is laden with a series of assumptions. Paul and I have been doing a lot of practice on that when he talks about messaging. If we break something down, we'll say, wow, you just said 6 words, and each of those could have easily 5 meanings.
Sure.
So I've got like some 30 different variances of what this, there's no simplicity. Here's complex. Right. Or that's predicated on this, though, right? And that means this. Well, what if that doesn't hold? Oh, that falls apart. Yep. So that's the downside to this, is that we say, oh, right, so it's simple. And so I'll just say it simply. No, saying it simply doesn't mean it doesn't have assumptions underlying it. Sure. And the challenge for us then is, how do we figure out where there's an assumption and where there's not? What's simple enough? Right, where does it go? But I like this as a simple way to get started looking at problems and solutions and where you need to go.
Well, that's a great point too, because the defining your problem statement, it sounds easy.
Right.
I'm finding, Michael, it's one of the most challenging things to do in business.
That's probably the most difficult part of the entire initiative.
Is to define the problem or challenge or pain.
And if you get it wrong, think about the ripple effects. How much are you basing on your assessment of that? And the new dimension I've started to add in is, let's say you get the problem statement right? So I'd say you've isolated it, you've elevated it. Is that the right problem to solve now?
Right.
Like there's a secondary part to that, and it's and so to your point, I find a lot of people get confused with that. Jason, I've got to think in your position, you've got to deal with that internally for security. You've got to deal with that internally with the business, and then you also deal with that now with your clients.
Yeah.
And sometimes they've got that long list of requirements, and you've got to stop and say, okay, guys, what problem are you really trying to solve?
That's it.
And I'm willing to bet most of the first answers are like right.
And we talked about that earlier, right? We talked about
37
that earlier.
problems.
Yeah. We talked about it earlier when they come to us from a vendor risk management perspective, right? They come to us and they say, all right, you have to fill out this, 550 questionnaire for us. And at the end of the day, when you peel the onion back and you truly ask, what's the outcome you're looking for? They realize that we're not processing data for them. We're not, we don't have access to their PII or their healthcare data. And then they quickly realize, wow, that questionnaire that was 500, 1,000 questions is now 50 questions because you're our IT vendor, you're our support vendor, you're our managed service.
And so think about that, right? You just removed assumptions and you took complexity out of the process.
That's right.
And that's exactly what we're talking about, right? You got it exactly right. It's about the risk. The more assumptions there have, the more complexity, the more risk I have.
Right.
If as a profession we can get more conditioned and comfortable reducing that complexity. People always think, oh, but if it sounds complex, that makes me more important. I sound better. No, not really. You just sound more complex and people tune out.
Exactly.
There's a real art form and a lot of work to get something to its true simplest roots. If we get better at asking those questions and understanding it, I think ultimately we solve problems better. We get to better decisions, right? So it's all about that process.
My job at the end of the day is to justify my existence. It's to get a solution to the customer, to our business. That's my job, right? I don't need
Which,
to sit
by
there.
the way, justifies your existence,
right? Exactly.
At
the end of the day,
every time
that's what
Jason
it
talks
does.
to a client, they're happy. We're
right.
winning deals. We're totally differentiated. We can charge a premium. Then you're entirely justified,
right? But I don't need to sit at a boardroom table and justify my existence. I need to sit there and solve problems. That's what I'm there for. Right.
I completely agree. All right, so Paul, I know you're going to want to talk about this because I hate this concept of soft skills. So I grabbed this article. Let me set it up while I put it here, and then guys, we'll go wherever you want with it. It's got 14 soft skills every IT pro needs. Okay, listen. Here's why I hate calling them soft skills. People will say, well, they're soft skills because they're you either have them or you don't, or they're really tough to measure. No, first of all, that's debunked. You can completely measure any of these, and anybody can develop them. And in fact, I think sometimes these are hard. It's far easier for me to teach engineering principles or security principles than it is some of these soft skills. But here's my questions. If you're listening to this now, whether you agree with me or not, completely irrelevant. Whether you like calling them soft skills or not, completely irrelevant. Whether you even like this list of 14 soft skills, how many of these skills do you have yourself? How many of these skills are you recruiting for on your team? And how are you developing these skills? Because what I see in our industry is we spend a lot of time on how to be better attackers and better defenders and better understanding stuff. We're seeing more around communication and leadership, but that's a discussion for a different day. But the rest of these skills, do you have a plan to actually develop them? Not awareness of them, not go to a training class. Develop them in your environment where you're actually leading change and incorporating these. Because if not, let me tell you where you got the biggest, best opportunity. And if you can get that right, you'll have people lining up at your door to work. You'll have no talent shortage at all. Completely guarantee that. Now, happy for you two to react to anything I've said or tell me the skills in this list that you look at and either completely agree with or you're scratching your head while they're there, or anything that's come to mind with it.
A lot of them are predicated on the fact that in your organization, let's say, people actually want to listen to you. Right.
Good point.
And I'm working with some folks, and in many folks in our industry, right? One of the problems or challenges, Jason, it sounds like you maybe didn't have this problem at quite the scale as some of the people I speak with, is that their senior management doesn't care about security, and a lot of these skills probably aren't going to help you until you reach the point of coming to an agreement that security is a problem that needs to be addressed, right?
Sure, agreed. I mean, fortunately, I had the luxury of being in a technology services company. Well, security is going to be core to what we do, right? I mean, our customers aren't going to want to do business with us if we don't have that top of mind. So,
but if you look at a nonprofit, state, government, university, that's the first challenge that I think you may have as you step into especially a CISO role. And some of these skills will help with that. Empathy, I certainly think, helps with that. A lot of them are like, but you got to get people on the same page with the problem.
You have to build a relationship.
And that's hard. Well, it's about relationship building. That, to me, that's a much harder.
And I mean, I'm looking at the list right now, and you may be able to take some of those and consolidate them into something like salesmanship, ability to translate tech jargon. I mean, for me, that's relationship building and conveation, right? I mean, that's
but hold on one second, because I want to ask Paul about this. Paul, how easy is it to learn salesmanship?
It's absolutely something you can learn. I mean, it's not
But
easy.
How easy is it?
It's easy to learn. It's harder to be effective with it.
More than a paragraph, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about this, guys. And Jason, you're involved in this too. Our industry historically does not enjoy marketing or sales, which is insane. Because what are you doing if you're running? What are you doing in your role, Jason? You're doing marketing and sales and problem solving. But you have to be explaining stuff both internally and externally, and selling stuff both to your team and to the business and to the engagement process. So can you learn and can you stack these? Absolutely. But the thing I was looking at is you got to learn how to be a good salesman. You know what? I've talked to professional sales trainers and say, hey, what are the fundamentals? I don't know. By the way, my book recommendation on this is the only sales guide you'll ever need. It breaks it. It's not the only sales guide you'll ever need, but it's the best I've ever read in terms of capturing the different steps of this process. And if you read that as a leader and you think, well, am I selling my ideas and my concepts internally? The answer is yeah, sure. But by the way, right, just that alone, just the salesmanship, you can easily spend a year just working on those fundamentals and trying to develop that. Because to your point, Paul, I can read a book, I can take a class, I can learn about it, but really implementing it, really understanding how to do that, that's not as easy as it seems.
And just on a side note, I've always prescribed to focus on your strengths, and we all have our own personal strengths, right? I mean, some of us can articulate things really well and align technology to the business jargon and be a true just salesman out of the gate because they just have that personality. But a lot of folks can't, right? So focus on your strengths. These other things in here that may not be your strengths, put a little focus on them because you want to refine them. You want to get decent at them, right? But don't make them your main focus, right? They'll always be a weakness. Focus on your true strengths and try to refine the weaknesses so that you're building up that portfolio of skills that you have.
On your team
or hire,
or hire people who can hire people who can actually align and fill those gaps, right?
Yep.
You want to hire.
It's good to see Paul and I still stare at brain.
That's it. That's it.
No, absolutely true, right? Because we're not going to be able to be masters of all 14 of these, right?
Right.
So, to be honest with you, if you're hiring folks around you who have strengths that align to your weaknesses, you're going to learn. That's going to be your learning mechanism right there. That's going to be your education. You're going to be learning from the folks that you hire to come in to fill these gaps.
Yep.
Right.
All right. I'm just going to tease out this last one. It's long. It's written by Sam Altman. And he talks about productivity. This is another area where I've been spending a lot of time, and I've been specifically looking at the influence of diet and sleep and hydration and all sorts of things. And one of the books in this area on my list, haven't read it yet, is Deep Work by Cal Newport. So I'm always curious when somebody says, okay, here's some of my stuff. Here's what I liked about this, right? He talks about focusing on the right stuff and the physical factors. And what's become apparent to me lately, like especially, is it's really those physical factors. You've got to think about your routines and your process. What are you saying yes to? What are you saying no to? How do you slice your time? How do you do it? He's got a ton of stuff in here around things like diet and routine and everything else. And I'll tell you, I'm doing some of the same things, and I'm fascinated by how well it's working. But let me ask you this. and Jason, I'd really like your take on it. You've got a lot of stuff. You've got a lot of moving targets, and you've got a lot of busyness. Mm-hmm. What are some of your insights? How are you managing your time so that you're getting that balance between understanding the changes, working with the clients, translating stuff internally, and keeping yourself sane? I mean, I say that tongue in cheek, but at the same time, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. What are like 2 or 3 things that have really helped you keep your arms around it and manage this better?
Sure. So one thing I did a while back, and it was something that we did as a corporate reading initiative, was the 4 Disciplines of Execution. Mm-hmm. If you've ever read that, it's a book by Stephen Covey. And you read that, and it shows that you're not going to be able to execute unless you can truly wedge focus time into your calendar, right? So one of the things I've made sure I always do is align my calendar where I have that time to focus on the important initiatives that I need to make sure get executed on. Because your calendar will get way out of whack, right? Yep. Your schedules will just go nuts. And if you're not forcing that focus time in there, you're never going to feel accomplished. If I didn't truly hold that level of diligence to everything I'm scheduling in my day, I would probably get to the end of a month, the end of a quarter, and not feel like I've accomplished anything, right? So that beats down on a person. You do that for 2 quarters, you do that for a year, you do that for multiple years. You're literally in the grind all day, every day, focusing on just keeping the lights on in the run. Where I want to be focused on the growth and the transformation of our organization. And if I'm not wedging that into my schedule and making sure I'm focusing on that, I'm not going to feel accomplished, right? It's just my personality. I need to be able to show myself I made an impact, right? That's a personal gain for me. I made an impact on the organization. I've helped the organization grow. I've helped it transform. So I have to force that into my calendar, really focus on it.
One of the things that works for me along those lines, Jason, is when I do set aside time to focus, I try and give myself a few things in that time block that I can focus on that are, of course, they're not all the highest priority, but I find I'm more productive when I'm, as you say in the article, Mike, are you working on what you like? Yeah. So I kind of give myself a pick list. Like during this time, I got to work on one of these 3 things, and it may be whatever kind of I'm motivated to work on during that time. Yep. If I pigeonhole myself and say, this time I got to work on this, my personality at least, sometimes I'm not the most productive doing that, right? If I give myself some options, I can pick what I feel the most enthusiastic about at that time, and I work on that, and then I try and work my way through.
At the end of the day, there are going to be a lot of things that you don't like to focus on that you have to, though, right? So that's why I make sure I'm putting it in there. Otherwise, my personality that likes to procrastinate until the last minute, then I'm cramming like I would for a college exam. I don't want to be doing that, right? So
sometimes you need that level of motivation. I do that with my presentation. Sometimes if I will work on something else, even though I know I have a deadline, but as a deadline approaches, that motivation just gets bred inside, and you're like, now I got to do it, and now I'm motivated, right? I'll let Derby on slides.
I love it. There's a lot of stuff there. Jason, I hope you come back and join us again.
I loved it. This is great.
Because I know, and we talked off camera, there's some stuff left for us to talk about that you've got some pretty good insights on. So how about we just say, we look forward to seeing you come back again.
Awesome.
Quick reminder, everybody, we're off next week, October 8th. I think Paul's going to be recovering, and I got some stuff here we're going to do with the kids. We're back on October 15th with Mike McKee, the CEO of Observe It, and more ways for you to elevate your performance. In the meantime, you can catch me at Catalyst on Twitter. Paul's at Security Weekly. Hit us up on LinkedIn. Let us know what you thought of today's show. And I'll just remind you that exceptional leaders elevate the people around them. So here's to a great week of investing in yourself so that you elevate the people around you. See you in 2 weeks.